Hi there, and welcome to the Side Quest, the in-betweeny podcast we do when we need a break from a high-stakes adventure. And we spend that break talking a little bit of shit about geek pop culture. Who do we have with us today? Myself, Steve Weverill, we've got John Hartness, we've got Joseph Brassey, we've got Robert Bevan, and we've got Rick Waltieri. Say hello, guys.
Hi.
Hey. Yeah, in fact, the only one we don't have here is Drew, because he's too good to show up for these side quests.
Yeah.
Is that like the first time you've ever pronounced Rick's name right?
I do it now and then, just to keep people on their toes. Next time, I'm going to pronounce it entirely differently.
You mean it's not Goltieri?
It might be, Joe. No one really knows.
Depending on when you catch me, it could be.
And only his creditors really know how it's spelled.
No, if he keeps changing it enough, I'll keep.
That's the secret, Cap. I'm always misspelling.
That's my hope. Is like, I sign every check a little bit differently than the last.
Okay, well, listeners familiar with this will know the standard. They'll know the standard formula. I introduce us, get Rick's name wrong, but then we go into a bonus section before our main topic. And the bonus section is generally about what's going on kind of at the minute, what's piqued our interest. We just so happened to watch the new trailer for It, the sequel.
This is the It Part 2?
Yeah, the Part 2 from It Part 1. The Stephen King epic, I guess. It's probably his most epic, that and The Stand.
Yeah. And a Part 2 after a Part 1. Who would have thought?
Yeah, and no one saw that coming.
Well, I gotta be honest, I didn't, because I didn't watch the first one. So I didn't know they cut it in half.
With the original TV movie, they kind of cut it in half.
Yeah, but it was a miniseries.
Yeah, that's true.
And it had Tim Reed.
Tim Curry.
I thought it had Tim Reed too.
I don't know who Tim Reed is.
Yeah,
but
I have no idea who it is. But it had Tim Curry, so fuck everybody else who was in it.
There was a Timothy. Maybe there was more than one Timothy, but one Timothy scarred an entire generation of people for life. And the
More
other
than
Timothy,
one generation.
Tim Curry is the fucking ultimate bad guy. He nearly killed Orphan Annie.
Tim Curry scarred multiple generations because a lot of us, he was our first exposure to whatever the hell Rock Frankenfurter was.
Ah, yes. The old sexual confusion.
Pure awesomeness.
Yeah.
Good times. I remember the first time I watched Rocky Horror was actually a live show that my dad knew the producer for, and must have been about 13 at the time, and he got us in backstage. So we went in, we had to go in backstage. I didn't know we hadn't paid, and I just went in and thought, I don't really know what this is about. So many women in leather. It's like, this is what life's about. And then later I saw the Tim Curry thing, and that like put whole other interesting options on the table. It was a wonderful time. It's a wonderful movie. Tim Curry's a wonderful guy. Also tried to murder Orphan Annie, so bear that in mind.
I went to a live show. I went to one of the live audience participation thing, midnight showings of Rocky Horror with a friend. And that was good times because we were like the only ones who knew half of the thing.
Well, I was the exact opposite. I had no idea what it was, or that there was supposed to be audience participation. So I just we went down to London. I was sitting around, like, me and my sister, dressed normally, everybody else in fishnets. I thought, this just must be how these city folk dress.
The Londoner uniform.
They must think I'm a right bumpkin.
And things like that. I like to be the one who just fucks at everybody, purposely, gets to get shit wrong. It's like, okay, let's do that warp factor song now.
Warp factor. Let's do the warp factor.
You're the one jumping to the right and knocking people over like fucking dominoes.
My wife actually grew up on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. She's like, oh yeah, we were watching that show since we were like 5 years old. And I was like, really?
For a minute, I thought she grew up on it like it was a traveling circus of Rocky Horror Picture Show. That would be wonderful backstory.
Yeah, I know.
There's a shingles.
Oh, we're getting distracted by the one that it is, Tim Curry, and
the
sexual awakening of the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Instead, we should talk about the naked old woman ass that is the It trailer.
Yeah, let's go right back to Golden Hot Pants.
Oh boy.
It was her chest, right? Yeah, she wasn't like opening up her ass.
Boy, I missed a hell of a trailer.
Not unless her ass was under her chin. And she didn't look like a particularly limber old lady.
Wait, hold on a second. I just need to clarify something because I only got like a glimpse of the trailer here. Is this like... Okay, you know what? I don't care. Spoilers, people. Is this like the scene where Pennywise opens up his mouth and shows the deadlights, but with a woman's ass?
No.
God, I wish it was.
It's to be like, holy shit, that's some deadlights.
This is like some redheaded woman is looking at pictures on a wall, and behind her, this naked old woman, bounces across the screen looking like she's humping a giraffe or something.
Wait a second, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, they took one of the least, I guess, interesting scenes from the book and decided to make a trailer of that. Which honestly, if it was Pennywise opening his mouth and there's just this old woman's ass there and deadlights shining out of it, I would have bought a ticket right now. You know?
Yeah.
So I was talking about when the old woman was just sitting in the chair saying, "Oh, it's hot in here," and she's like flapping her shirt and like she's got this like horrible burn mark on her chest, and it's like, oh man, she's flashing her gross scarred titties. Ew.
Yeah. I thought it looked like she got shot in the chest with a shotgun.
Oh, was that? Well,
No.
I don't know.
Jesus.
I don't know. It's been a long fucking time since I read the book.
So her stripper days are behind her.
I want to derail again to sexually awakening moments from Stephen King novels.
Was this one?
No,
Yeah.
I was about to. It put me in mind of the first time I watched The Shining, with the bathroom scene where the incredibly attractive woman gets out of the bath, and teenage me is thinking, "Oh, this is new and interesting," and then she turns into a rotting old hag, and I'm thinking, "Well, now I have a boner anyway."
Yeah, I think I might have brought this up before, but the same thing happened with Bachelor Party, when like Tom Hanks was having these, or somebody was having these visions, like there's a naked woman on the bed, and then like she like had Tom Hanks' head all of a sudden or something. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember that scene. Didn't she turn into a nun first or something?
All right, none I can handle, but
Yeah.
Tom Hanks' tits. Ugh.
I mean, that takes some concentration.
I mean, none is like bonus points.
I think I have never read it, but I have actually meant to, because but I know the story and I know the lore behind it and everything, and the fucking cosmology behind it is just awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, giant devil space spider that makes people crazy by looking at him.
I've read this book like a couple dozen times, and really, I mean, there's really only two not particularly like wonderful parts of it, and one is the the ending, which is, and two is the child orgy.
Yeah, the gang rape scene is not so.
It's not a gang rape scene. It is quite literally a child orgy.
Yeah.
Well, let's not get into the legal ramifications of what is a gang rape, because that doesn't make for a fun podcast. But yeah,
that would have changed the entire dynamic of that scene. If you're like, hey, we're all stuck in the sewer together, how do we get out? I know. Let's all fuck Beverly.
God.
Fortunately, it doesn't work that way.
I'm really hoping that the new movie is going to leave that part out.
Well, it happens when they're kids, and we already got past the kid part, and thankfully they left that out. And the reality is, it's one of those scenes that you read the story and you're like, this is highly, highly unnecessary.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's really no. I think it's one of those things you can skip over in the movie and have nobody do anything except breathe a massive sigh of relief.
Yes, it's one of those kind of spot the places where Stephen King was high as fuck moments, and I think that's definitely 10 points.
Yeah.
I didn't see it or read the book or anything, or even see a trailer for the first movie. I know there's a clown in it, and now I know there's old lady titties.
I know you're not a horror fan, Bevan. Did you ever watch the TV miniseries with Tim Curry?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
No, because I scare easy, and I don't enjoy being scared. So,
well, Tim Curry is a frightening dude, but who's the chap who plays the new clown? He's very good as well. And the Skarsgård.
Alexander Skarsgård.
Yeah, one of the Skarsgård.
Oh, is that who that is?
One of the innumerable Skarsgård children
There are a lot of them.
that have all been birthed from Stellan's loins.
They seem to be doing
Stellan's
well.
wife's loins. Various wives' loins.
I don't know. It's like I'm having a hard time getting like a horror vibe from this because it's like, okay, yeah, he's playing Pennywise and he's scary, but then they got James McAvoy on the cast, and like him and playing sane characters just do not go hand in hand, really.
I have been using James McAvoy's like a screen cap from his role in Filth forever, where he's just holding the cigarette and the scotch and looking like.
Did you ever read the book of Filth?
No, I didn't.
It's much more disturbing than the movie.
Actually, like a couple of people, speaking of it, a couple of people have pointed out that like structurally it really straddles the line between like horror story and adventure story, because it's like fundamentally the sort of coming of age story, and it's about people. It's not. It definitely does not slot into horror in a way that we kind of conventionally think of it now.
It's a fantasy epic.
Yeah.
It didn't really slot into horror that way when it was released.
Yeah.
At the time, it felt a lot more like Robert McCammon's Boy's Life than it did other Stephen King stuff like Salem's Lot or Pet Cemetery.
Or Carrie.
It is essentially Stand By Me with a demon clown and a child orgy.
Sold.
Boom. That's your pitch, and your execs are going. Okay, we like one part. We're gonna have a conversation about the second part.
Oh no! The Hollywood execs were all in for the child orgy. They just weren't so cool on the kids. They weren't good with the heartwarming coming of age shit.
I don't know.
They're like,
wait,
demon clown
I
and child orgy.
misunderstood what you said there. I thought they were all down to the child orgy, but yeah, they didn't like these particular kids.
Well, bring us the next batch.
That was what I heard, and I was like, that sounds right.
Depressingly so.
I mean, the upside of part two is I guess they can have more name actors in it, but the downside of part two, and I think almost everybody who's like read the book and seen the original miniseries will agree, is the best part of it is the kids' adventure. Yeah. And like when you get to the adult parts, it's almost like, okay, let's the way the book is written is it kind of goes back and forth between the kids and the adults. And reading the adult parts is almost kind of like, okay, when are we going to get back to the kids? Because they're more interesting.
Yeah, they are more interesting.
Wait, so that's not how the movies are. The first one is the kids and the second one?
Yeah, the first one's all the kids, and it's all the better for it, yeah.
I thought that they were going to do it like they did the book and bounce back and forth.
Not even close.
And it's a better movie for it. It's all the good parts of the book. And it was a well-handled movie. It was well-directed, well-casted, and well-paced. It worked as a good kind of horror, hinting at maybe a more wider mystical adventure. Not as much as the book ever did, but
not nearly as scary as they play it out to be. I mean, because here's the thing: the book is pretty goddamn terrifying, and the movie is kind of like, okay, there's some creepy parts to it, but I don't know. Something I think it's that over-reliance on CGI, which I'm sorry, but CGI and scary just do not go hand in hand.
I think to a certain extent, the whole like Pennywise first appears in the sewer talking to Georgie thing, I feel like the degree to which that became a meme, just kind of made it not scary for a lot of people. Because you see it, you're like, oh, this is that thing I've seen 7,000 times on the internet. Donald Trump's down there.
But it was well handled. I mean, that's an iconic scene, even if you're familiar with it. And I guess we're talking. I'm guessing that most people who saw the It remake probably hadn't have seen the miniseries with Tim Curry, which was mostly shit, but had some excellent moments, which were mostly Tim Curry, and probably haven't read the book, which I think. The way I came into it was I saw the miniseries, enjoyed it, read the book, was actually surprised by how little Pennywise the Clown was actually in it as a narrative kind of driving character compared to the miniseries. So to me, the It remake solved all of those problems by making it all about the kids, which are far more interesting because kids versus evil. We know that's a formula that works. You know, if there's an evil in my town, I'm not calling the police. I'm calling some kids on bikes. But
Call the Monster Squad.
yeah, and it was mostly based around Pennywise the Clown, who's the most interesting character in the book by far.
In all fairness to the original series, I can imagine them saying, "We got Tim Curry, so we're going to use the fuck out of Tim Curry."
Oh yeah, and you know, to their advantage, absolutely. If they hadn't done that, it would have been as forgettable as every other Stephen King miniseries.
The best, it's weird that there is one Stephen King miniseries that I do remember very, very well, and that's The Langoliers.
Oh,
because it was that scared the shit out of me when I was younger. But B, because I just remember Stephen King's cameo as the board meeting guy in that fucking hallucination that the weird guy had towards the end of the thing. And like the dude's flashback to his psychopathic father. He's like, you know what happens to kids who get bees? The Langoliers eat them with their rusty teeth.
The wonderful thing about Stephen King cameos is that every time he's in a cameo, even if you don't know who Stephen King is or what you're watching, you'd think, is this a cameo by the person who originally wrote this?
Yeah.
Now, is that the book that he can't remember writing because he was so fucked up, or is that Tommy Knockers?
No, that was Cujo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. He can't remember any of Cujo, according to On Writing. Anyway.
Well, that's only according to him. I think there's probably
when On Writing came out, there's probably several later in his career after On Writing came out that he doesn't remember
he
either.
probably can't even remember On Writing.
At the time he wrote it, he'd supposedly been sober for a while. It was post-car accident, so...
Oh, was it?
I don't know. Yeah,
On Writing?
Well, On Writing... Okay, so basically, as I understand it, he was in the middle of writing On Writing when he had his car accident.
Oh, right.
So, because in the middle of the book, there's that shift.
Yeah, because he talks about it in the book.
Yeah, he talks about buying the dude's car.
Probably off his face on painkillers.
He talks in the book, in the second half of the book, about buying the car of the dude who hit him and then like going to the yard beating the shit out of it with a sledgehammer.
Sounds like something I'd do if I was hopped up on painkillers.
I mean, it sounds like something I'd do on Tuesday.
You know what? Me too. I would. Actually, I should see if I can go bust up some car windows.
Yeah, sounds healthy.
In a lot.
Yeah,
In a lot.
When we got rid of our car and we were just having it towed away, this was in Korea. We were buying a new car. I wanted to smash it up with a hammer, but my wife wouldn't let me.
Why not?
Oh, because you don't do that.
That's not a thing normal sane people do. You're frightening me. But yeah.
Maybe we have a cultural difference. I don't know.
Yet more proof that she spent no time in Mississippi prior to knowing you.
There was a junk car at one of the firemen's fairs when I was growing up that, like, you for 30 seconds you could take a mallet and smash it with, and I almost wound up killing myself because I took a swing at the bumper not realizing it was one of those old cars with rubber bumpers. So I took a swing at the mallet and suddenly the mallet came right back up my face.
The bumper works.
Yeah.
And now we understand a lot about Rick. Traumatic brain injury at a very young age, and...
All right, well, stepping away from Rick's obvious traumatic brain injury, who among us has actually seen the It remake?
I watched it a couple months ago.
I watched a couple clips from it, but I haven't had a chance to, because I'm the only one in my family who would watch something like that, and it's not really, like, the time really isn't it. The only time that I would be able to watch it would be by myself, and that would require me to watch it by myself late at night, on a night when my wife isn't home, and the kids are both in bed. And that's not quite what I want to put on that.
No. You don't need that.
I'm pretty sure my wife has watched it because she loves horror movies. Me, I'm with Bevan. No, sir.
Yeah, you saw the second trailer here. Were you frightened by that?
I was not, but there were a couple of shots that I was like, I don't want to see that movie.
Yeah, because I almost had to turn it off. And this was just like an old lady in the kitchen getting cookies, and oh man, I come on, Bob, you're brave enough to sit through the rest of this.
The part that got me was like the jerky, sped up movement bits.
See,
That stuff freaks me out.
See, I hate that because it looks so fucking fake to me.
No, I always find that really cheap in trailers. That's kind of like you've got footage. Clearly, the original footage wasn't scary enough, so you've cut it up with a noise. I ain't falling for that shit, man. That's
I totally am.
Every time. Yep.
But I will say
Got me.
the It remake was there was
I've heard good things.
Yeah, there was spooky bits in it. It's like these days, certain things do well in cinema, and it tends to be horror seems to do well in cinema. But this was kind of like a game changer. This was everybody was queuing up. It was a cinematic event, and I think it kind of deserved that attention because it might not be the most memorable film, but it was a very well made horror film, very well casted, very well paced, very well directed. It certainly had some spooky kind of iconic visual moments in it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one.
I thought it was so. I mean, I watched it. I was like, okay, that happened. I mean, it was entertaining, but I was like, okay.
Well, Rick, you're probably the horror aficionado of this group, so you're comparing it to some very good horror movies. But I'm saying kind of like the modern kind of so-so cookie cutter paint by numbers horror movies we've been getting recently. I thought this was kind of stand out for its quality alone and the interestingness of the stories and the characters. I thought it was a cut above the average cinematic horror fare.
See, one of the things about the book that I find incredibly frightening is there's in typical horror movies, there's a concept of, oh, the monster's chasing me. Okay, I get so far away, I turn back. Oh, it's gone. And one of the things in the book that I find terrifying is when the kids are running away from it, they turn back and it's right there and it's a lot closer and shit. And it this happens more than once. And I'm like, that's the thing that's frightening. That whole concept that, okay, this thing might not be real. And then you turn around and it's like, oh, maybe it's in my head. But in the book, it's kind of like you turn around and it's like, no, this thing is fucking real.
Mm.
And that's the parts of the book that I found frightening. And they completely just did nothing with that. So so I went in there like, hoping for the best parts of the book, and there's some good parts from there, and the ending itself, honestly, I don't know. I know they had to change it. They changed it from the book, and what they did, I was just like kind of unimpressed. So part two is kind of one of those. Yeah, when it's on Amazon Prime and maybe it's a $2.99 rental, then I'll grab it.
Mm. To me, it was a much neater package. Because obviously you can't do a full conversion of the book. That would end up being about 6 hours long. The miniseries worked in what they were trying to do, but wasn't executed very well. So for a kind of a 90-minute movie, I understand the choices they made. And I thought the director had some interesting takes on what happened. It wasn't pant-wettingly terrifying. But it was, I did think it was a cut above a lot of the usual horror stick we get. I, for one, am interested in it part 2. I think it will be a good movie. Maybe not a scary movie. Maybe not an accurate adaptation of the novel. And that is important to some people. And it should be important to some people. But I think it will be a good movie. I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, I sat here on this podcast and downloaded the ebook because I haven't read it in years. And now I want to read the book again.
It's a great book. Except for that child orgy bit, yeah.
Yeah, well, and the thing that's great about the book is the stuff that would never make it into a movie, which are just some awesome character scenes that really just have to do with like the backstory of the town and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of just kind of. Yeah. It's same with most Stephen King books. Some of the most interesting parts of it is this kind of Americana character work he does, which could translate into a movie if you were willing to make that movie very long. But
It's I think one of the things that actually, people have talked about his sparse prose or his like, I think one of the things that Stephen King does that a lot of like really great top tier authors do is he's really good at figuring out what are the things about a specific storytelling format that you can only really do well in that format, and really making it work in there, which is why like some of the greatest works are really hard to translate, because like you look at a lot of Alan Moore's comics, it's really hard to translate them into movies or TV series because they're designed to take advantage of what comics can do that other media can't.
Yeah,
That's like a skill on top of everything else.
Stephen King's a fantastic novelist. I think it says something that his most famous movie adaptation is The Shining, which he hated and said it wasn't a good adaptation of the novel. And it wasn't, but it was a great movie because it wasn't.
Conversely, some authors, like maybe some of the Authors and Dragons authors, write their novels almost specifically with movie scenes in mind, Hollywood, in case you're looking for something that translates well.
Yeah.
Some of those authors, even when they collect those stories, label them by season so that TV producers could very easily chop shit up. Just throwing that out there.
And they have art on those covers that translates really well to children's cartoons.
Or anime.
Shingles would make a pretty good anime, not gonna lie.
I just finished watching Love, Death and Robots, and I think a Shingles version of that's what the world needs.
Love, Death, and Shingles.
It's like Love, Death and Robots meets Cards Against Humanity.
I think basically what I'm trying to say is we've spent enough time blowing smoke up Stephen King's ass. He doesn't really need our promotion. So let's move on to our main topic. And the main topic was something we kind of touched on in the last side quest when we were talking about guilty pleasures. And it's something that I think we've watched between us enough diverse examples of to have an interesting conversation about. We're going to talk about anime.
Yes. And not just fat old men wearing Sailor Moon costumes.
Well, that too. I think that's an important part of it.
See, this is why I couldn't be on the last episode. Anime is not a guilty pleasure for me.
Well, that's
me either.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's kind of, I want to talk about it because taking the long view, I was kind of there where it was something you had to basically import or like really look hard for. And I don't even mean I'm not talking about the pornographic version, just normal kind of.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Well, that too. You couldn't just go and ask your mum to go and buy you that. But I mean, it's gone from something that was very much about Japan that is kind of, I want a more friendly word than infiltrate. It's kind of infiltrated American culture to the point now where a lot of the comic book industry depends on manga, and a lot of what we see in the cartoons is, if not anime, like Pokemon, I guess is an anime, but very much influenced by such, like, say, Steven Universe is very much influenced by that distinctive style.
Or Avatar: The Last Airbender.
There was someone, I think it was Paul Kruger, wrote this really interesting tweet thread on the fact that Avatar: The Last Airbender is a Western animated series tackling an Eastern style story, whereas Full Metal Alchemist is an Eastern series tackling a Western style story.
Well, that's the thing. That's kind of something very much at the heart of it, and I think the first one I watched was Valley of the Wind. And all the kind of tropes were there. And that was like 1984. So I was very young when I watched it. And even then, I could tell it had its own thing. But all the kind of the naive, good-hearted princess-style heroine, the cute animal sidekick, the grumpy old man mentor, the old witch mentor, which I don't think they've changed the design of her in 30 years. And this theme that what you think is the bad guy is, in fact, nature, and it's something to find a balance with rather than destroy, and the people who are trying to destroy it are actually the bad guys. These are kind of really reoccurring themes in anime, and a kind of a reoccurring theme in fantasy as well. Lord of the Rings is very much about. I remember the London 2012 Olympics where they did the opening show and it had all these Englishes playing cricket and having a jolly old time, and then boom, Industrial Revolution. It was supposed to be a good thing, but you kind of thought, man, it's kind of squashed all those cricket playing guys there, and they looked like they were having a happy life. And that's kind of what fantasy is about. It's this, Western fantasy, this yearning for a simpler time, very much typified in Tolkien. Against industrialization, but Japan very much has its own unique spin on that, and in the same way that most great fiction is kind of culturally, I guess the psychology of the nation at the time informs it. Alien invasion movies were entirely informed by McCarthyism. Gangster movies entirely informed by Prohibition. Westerns entirely informed by the American ideal of the pilgrim carving a new world out of the wild world. And Japan as a, kind of a complex, I guess at the heart of it is this urge to rediscover what they were before their own disastrous forays into imperialism and the abrupt militarized end of that. And it's kind of about finding or glorifying this idea of the naturally magic humanity in a modernized, mechanized world. And that's kind of at the heart of all anime for me. And
even the ones that try to see how many tentacles you can shove up a schoolgirl's
I was
ass.
gonna say there's that, and there's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where people go and find magic and friendship and kill monsters by dramatically flexing and posing.
Oh no, we got the hypermasculinity and the weird porn. They're their own things as well, and they're offshoots of
Cowboy
that.
Bebop.
The weird porn is particularly interesting because I read that this comes from the fact that the censorship laws in Japan are, well, you can't have a penis entering a vagina. That would be obscene. And they're like, well, what about a squid? You're like, yeah, go with it.
Well, I can go back even further because I'm fucking old. But I remember, like, one of my first, forays into anime was Star Blazers, and this was at a time when you had a choice between something like that or Super Friends.
Yeah.
And the early seasons of Super Friends, and even the later seasons, let's be honest, they didn't really get too deep into plot there. Whereas you had Star Blazers, which, even ignoring the fact that, goddamn, the wave motion cannon is just the most awesome thing in the fucking universe, even ignoring that, you had complex storytelling that
Wasn't available here.
Yeah, that just didn't dumb it down like everything on like Channel 7 on like a Saturday morning was.
They were taking animation far more seriously than the West was in the mainstream, I would say. Because you got some serious Western animations, but they tended to be not in the mainstream. Whereas the Japanese were like, well, let's do a cartoon for kids, but let's also make it fucking awesome and complex.
Two of the ones it's interesting we talk about, there's a number of anime actually rank as some of my favorite media of all time, and one of those, and I will fight on a hill over this, is I am of the opinion that Cowboy Bebop is one of the best sci-fis ever done.
It's fantastic, and it also has the recurring theme of finding the kind of magic of humanity against a modern mechanized world. So I'm going to put that as a point for Steve.
Well, it's this send up to music. It's like every episode is a different take on a different musical genre, and it's sort of long running character arc. The longest one is Spike's, obviously, and that one is just. It's like I would actually call it almost like a gangster opera in terms of its pathos.
The operatic style of it, it's like even stuff I remember kind of like when I was a teenager, it's like Overlord. Yeah, lots of tits and porn in this. Something like Devil Man. Hooray, monster tits. But even something like Devil Man did have this like surprisingly human melodramatic moments in it. And at the time, I was kind of like, I'm going to fast forward this to the tits. But like looking back, I'm kind of, I appreciate that they were kind of force feeding me a bit of philosophy, before my parents walked in, so that was great.
And your parents just walked in and saw the demon tits, and but mom, dad, it's philosophy.
What were you doing, Steve? I'm absorbing philosophy.
Look, you weren't here 5 minutes ago when they're ruminating on the human condition, all right? Now that woman's wrestling a squid. And I understand how that might seem strange to you, Mum, but, it's all part of the rich tapestry of the human experience.
Yeah, not demon tits, bro. Yeah, that was all real deep. And I got none of it, but I like My Hero Academia because a lot of shit blows up.
Dude, okay, I could write an essay on this.
I believe you.
I just I'll try not to spoil people, but All Might's character arc through the first 3 seasons. So I'm a martial artist, and I'm a 34-year-old martial artist. So I am a lattice of injuries. And there is something about, because the whole thing he has, and I guess this is as much of a spoiler as I'll give for any strange person who's listening.
It's in the first episode, man. So it's really
not I know. He's got this inherited tremendous power, and when he passes it on to his successor, there's some remnants of it still in him. And so he can still fight like he used to, but every time he uses that power, there's a little less of it left. And the amount of time he can use it for is drastically reduced. And that is it's basically the most on point sort of metaphor that I've seen for being an aging fighter or an aging athlete.
I thought it was a metaphor for just being an aging dude and fucking.
It probably is.
Often and.
He's also, and I thought you were going there because you were saying you were lattice of injuries. Is All Might is fundamentally an injured character.
Oh yeah,
it has nothing really to do with his age or him passing on his power. He starts off and really in the first 5 minutes you see him, you realize that something's wrong.
Yeah, he's crippled. Yeah. He's physically crippled and disabled, and he's that on top of everything. It's I have only this much, many more times I can push myself, and then I'm fucking done.
But even now, we're talking about shit that they wouldn't bother with in most Western action cartoons. G.I. Joe would not have given a shit about that. That's an old example. Transformers wouldn't have given a shit about it. They might have kind of, Cup might have went, I need a little bit more oil than I used to be. It wouldn't be a kind of thematic thing about it. It would just be a character quirk.
Well, yeah, and if they're robots, so it's kind of I got my arm blown off. Let me just screw a new one on.
Robots don't get prostate cancer, but you humans do, and you can.
I think that some of that comes from the fact that we in the West never respected it as an art form. We started from a place of, this is something for kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you start from there, as opposed to starting from, this is something for everyone to enjoy, then you're not going to get deep themes.
Well, we started with this is for kids, and then Hanna-Barbera blew up, and everything went downhill.
Yeah, it's also something worth pointing out that because of the censorship laws in America and in my own country, it became very adamant that these children's cartoons had to have a moral message. And rather than lacing that subtly into the plot and having a philosophical discussion or theme acted out in the plot, we just basically got He-Man after punching a dinosaur going, remember kids, be nice to your friends, bullying is bad. So you just fucking punched a dinosaur, mate. Is that what's going through your head right now? What about our dinosaurs' friends?
And the G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe halo dropping out of their helicopters, and war is wrong, kids.
It might look awesome. The truth of the matter
is, you never got any of that shit on Dragon Ball Z. You got 30 minutes of people screaming and blowing the shit out of each other, and at the end, credits. No lesson.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Rick, I've been talking about the more serious, more philosophically interesting, even though it is, I'm not saying that's all anime, and I do want to talk about the other side of it, which is just batshit insane machismo. I want to get into that.
Talk shit about Dragon Ball Z.
But I just
Don't you be talking shit about Dragon Ball Z.
Does that make you yell and make your hair stand on end when people talk shit about Dragon Ball Z?
And that's like an entire episode of Joe just getting angrier and angrier. Next time on Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, we should just put Joe's scream there on a loop for the next 15 minutes, and that's
His power
maybe
level
him
is
reaching
increasing.
Super Saiyan 1 there.
Just a close up on some guy's face for about 10 minutes while he goes, I didn't realize Joe cared this much about anime, but now I realize that he does.
Exactly.
Is he really this angry? He seems pretty angry.
His carrying level is over 9,000.
But no, you bring a good point, Steve. It's like when anime gets deep, it gets deep. But when it gets batshit shallow,
All right.
it gets.
I'm going to give the listeners a little peek behind the curtain of my intellectual process here. Basically, the other weekend I got drunk and sat up watching Baki all night, and that's what I want to talk about. But I think I have to frame it. I want to frame the discussion around my appreciation of anime and how it's developed me as a creative person and how it's kind of influenced American culture for the better. But basically, I want to talk about these incredibly muscly dudes just punching each other for 30 minutes at a time. I just want to talk about this extremely homoerotic, hyper-violent cartoon that I stayed up watching all night while drunk by myself.
Yeah. And I've been watching it all week because you fucking sold it on Facebook.
Well, I'm gonna be picking that up in a second. But if you gentlemen haven't, since I know it is on Netflix, and since you are in a drunken anime watching mood, you need to go and find a little show called Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann.
I'm never going to remember that, Joe. I'm never going to remember.
No, okay,
just Gurren Lagann. That's all you
Gurren
need to
Lagann.
remember.
Go and watch it because it manages the massive art of parodying the super robot genre, and then all of a sudden it turns around and it punches you in the emotions.
Yes, really.
And you're just standing there going, "Oh my god!" And then people are throwing galaxies at each other.
Yeah. It gets horribly ridiculous at the end, but
so good.
the first season, you're right. It's it's this light thing, and then it just kicks you right, and then it just waits till you drop your guard, and it just kicks you in the nuts wearing spiked cleats.
It's just so it just wrecks you, and then you're like, "Oh my god, I'm in." See, I disagree on the leg one because I love the last part. I love the last part so much.
Before we get into the hyper muscle stuff, I just want to talk.
Yeah.
There's a real style about anime, and there's a real language to it. It ignores our idea of pacing. It can go from incredibly quick to having an entire episode of people just talking about a fight that hasn't happened yet. Like little things, like how in Western comics, when somebody's asleep, they've got Z's over their head, which doesn't really make sense. And in Japanese comics, they've got a snot bubble coming out of their nose, which doesn't really make sense in a different way. And it kind of like, in a Western comic, I'm attracted to this woman. In a Japanese comic, I'm attracted to this woman, so now I'm going to have this disastrous nosebleed, which would kill an ordinary human being.
And the other thing they like to do is selective amnesia. Because what was it? Ramna 1/2 did that all the fucking time. Where
that's one of the few I've seen.
Yeah, the character would finally make a move on the girl he likes. Then 5 minutes later, she'd be like, "Let's talk about this." Talk about what? I don't remember it.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. Relationship is almost always shy. Well, when we're not talking about the tentacles, okay. Shy boy doesn't realize woman likes him.
That's in the harem genre, though. Really, it's not everywhere.
It crops
the
up.
harem genre is shy boy fucks every woman he meets.
Yeah.
Or doesn't while they chase him for 90 episodes. Tenchi Muyo.
Oh, this huge-breasted woman is attracted to me. What do I do? Just kind of crop up quite a lot in anime. Yeah. It's just quite a nice way of putting it.
The entire plot of Love Hina is essentially that a guy at a girls' school, and by the end of I think the first season, every single girl in this school wants to bone him.
I saw a really decent parody of that, some YouTube video, and it's just this guy. It's like, and welcome, this guy. He's due to some weird coincidence, he's the only boy in this girls' school. Some girl's like, I hope this doesn't interrupt our naked pillow fights. And he's sitting there going, "Oh man, this is really going to affect my studies." Like,
I'm starting to understand the origin of like the entire lit RPG genre.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I get it now.
guys just like, I just really want to be good at mathematics, and I'm surrounded by all these huge-breasted women who want to have sex with me. Oh, what am I going to do?
I love math.
Except the difference there is like, in anime, they will actually give each of the like big-breasted women a personality and a story arc.
Yeah.
Compared to like, some of the lesser literature out there. Where it's okay, you're big-breasted cardboard 1, you're big-breasted cardboard 2.
It's basically a man and his sex dolls. Which has its place in literature. I'm not kink-shaming anyone. There's listeners sitting in there in their basement with their army of sex dolls. Give them a personality, man. Come on. All right. I was mostly talking to myself there.
Yeah, that really felt like some transference going on, brother.
Yeah. I might edit that out. All right. So, yeah, I love the fact it's got its own language. It's got its own strange humor. I love the fact that in the early anime, when the translations just didn't work very much, and you just get people making noises to fill in the blanks where the mouth was. So in the like old Speed Racer cartoons, it'd be like, "I'm going to drive the car now." Wah! And like, why are you making that noise, man?
Well, or they'd do weird jump cuts because the Japanese cartoon would have like boobs or something in it.
Oh, yeah. And you can't show that in Western civilization.
No, you can show that guy, punching somebody's sternum through their spine, but heaven forfend.
But no nipple.
A bare nipple, what? Oh, I miss those days.
So if we were going to recommend starter anime to people like me and Bob, what are, like Joe, you said Cowboy Bebop.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you, John, in particular, would love Cowboy Bebop because, again, it's not just it's this sci-fi, action adventure. Like each episode is practically a different genre, but it's also, and it's each episode is practically a different genre of story, but each episode is also a different genre of music. It's like it's send-ups to jazz, send-ups to blues, it's send-ups to rock, like to heavy metal, just everything. And again, it's this huge story. It's fantastic. So Cowboy Bebop, if you like, if you want that, and I would also suggest if you like high fantasy, Record of Lodoss War is very good. The OVA though, more than the TV series.
Well, what's an OVA?
Okay, OVA is generally like. Let me explain that.
See, by the fact that you have to explain it, you've gotten out of anime for them to begin with.
No, okay, yeah. Record of Lodoss War is just in general pretty good. It's like it's just sort of it's corny as hell, but it's sort of one of the beginner. It's sort of like the genre codifier for anime style fantasy stories.
Oh, slow down. We still didn't answer what OVA is.
Yeah.
Original voice something. Hold on. Don't
Is
make me
it
fucking Google this.
original voice?
We don't need to know what it exactly stands for, but what is it?
It's original video animation is what it stands for. It's basically like often it's a type of movie or miniseries made with regards to a property that's like often an OVA is separate from the TV series.
Okay.
Or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So is that like the My Hero Academia thing that got shown in the movie theaters?
Sort of. Kind of like that, except that was like specifically a film.
Okay.
I have a specific recommendation for Bob, and it comes with a caveat because I've talked about this before. It's Goblin Slayer, but the first fucking episode is really fucking brutal, and I don't like it. It's a bit off-putting, but the general premise of it is D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, for all you people who haven't been paying attention, done in a kind of JRPG style. And I think anyone who's played those games would get it, because it's about this world where there's adventurers and they go to adventurers guilds and they go and fight dragons and there's paladins and there's clerics and there's barbarians. But the main hero is Goblin Slayer. and he's a low-level fighter who specifically specializes in goblins. And because Bevan's work is, he'll tell you it's like mostly dick jokes, and it is. There's a healthy amount of dick jokes in there, but there's also this kind of, what I find interesting about his plots is, especially in the short stories, is the characters will come up to a situation and try and mechanically work it out. And this is what Goblin Slayer does. He doesn't go in there being the biggest, baddest fighter, and he doesn't do the typical anime thing of just going like, oh, well, now I'm in touch with my emotions, so I'll win. He does do that sometimes, but actually he's just a really cunning, brutal motherfucker. And he'll just come up with all these kind of terrifying ways he takes down these goblins. And it's actually this kind of like, oh yeah, what if D&D was real? And then it's kind of like, well, if D&D was real, it'd be brutal and terrifying. But also, it's a really fun cartoon to watch. So I'd recommend that.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
I mean, I was gonna say, if you've watched like the original Voltron, you've already kind of like watched anime. But if we're looking at something, I guess, more recent, I would say a good starter, I would say, is probably Inuyasha. Just because it kind of like has a lot of classic anime elements. It's a reasonably easy to like follow story. There's good battles in it. There's a lot of humor in it. And I mean, it kind of follows like the main character, who's this like modern day schoolgirl who kind of gets sucked back into like, the feudal era. So you're kind of figuring shit out as she is.
Another really good one. I mentioned it earlier. You want to watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Is really, really good. It's basic. It's got a good, solid, serious story. It concludes. It has an end. That's another thing about a lot of anime series that they were doing before Western animation was the stories would have ends. They would conclude. They would finish their story arcs. They would start out with a premise and then they would end that premise. Now that happens more often now, but it like back, especially in like the 90s, it never.
and then you have animes based on manga that have been going for like 7,000 issues, which will never end because eventually they just get tired of animating it and just say, okay, we're just going to stop here in the middle of an arc because we're just never going to reach the end.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that the manga influence on or competitiveness with American comics is. There's so fucking much of it, and it's kind of like people will say, oh, have you read this manga? You'd be like, yeah, I picked it up. I didn't really like it. So it only really gets good in like the 80th season. I'm like, oh, Jesus, man, that's fucking commitment. But it's such an industrious industry out there that they just they churn out these epics, and it's like, oh well, yeah, to get a proper understanding of this, you basically need to dedicate about 3 years of your life to it. And there's something good about that, but it's also kind of a little bit intimidating to the casual reader, I should imagine.
Yeah, you're not going to get me in on a starter manga in episode 5,000 or issue 5,000.
Yeah, it's kind of like telling somebody, okay, start watching The Simpsons and let me know when you catch up to the recent season.
Or telling somebody to pick up Game of Thrones this week.
Well, it would be more like I was talking to my dad, and I'd been to watch Endgame. He said, how was it? And I said, it's perfect. Endgame's already been out a while by the time this airs, so I'm not going to spoil anything. But he said to me, should I go watch it? And it's like, Dad, do you remember when I told you to watch Iron Man? And he said, yeah. And he said, you remember that you ignored me and you watched Iron Man 2 and you didn't get it? He's like, yeah. And he said, remember me explaining to you that you can't just watch the second film, you have to watch the first film first. He's like, yeah. It's like, well, you've already fucking ruined it. You can never watch Endgame now. You can't. You've ruined the entire experience because you didn't watch it properly. And that's kind of like what. It's like you'll never be on this level that I am on now after watching Endgame because you chose to ignore me. And I think that's what a lot of manga is like. It's kind of, if you don't get into it properly, you may as well fuck off, amateur.
Yeah, but like, something, hardcore manga users can be really fucking insufferable.
Well, most hardcore nerd boys can be insufferable. Welcome to the podcast, people.
Yeah, you're not wrong. We're all pretty insufferable.
Well, I'm not gonna not throw my recommendation into the mix, even though I've done it twice already.
No, I want to hear it again. I want you to break this down a bit more because I am intrigued by your fascination.
And I really want you to watch this series, Revolutionary Girl Utena. It's
Oh yeah,
you know this, Joe?
I know. I haven't watched it, but I know of it, and I have a
well.
lot of friends. I have a lot of friends who speak very highly of it.
Oh man, I got our wedding rings designed to mimic the rose seal. That's how this is as close to religion as I get.
You insufferable fanboy.
Oh, I am. Oh God, it's so weird though, because I spoke to this before. There's three, like Joe was saying, this is a story with a solid arc and a definitive end. It's it's got 3 arcs, and when you go through I think the first arc is 13 episodes, and you go through it thinking, you watch the first episode and you say, what the fuck is this goofy shit, and why? Why do I feel compelled to go on to the next episode? But you do. And you feel that way through most of the first season. And then the second arc, the Black Rose Saga, that gets kind of dark. But still goofy. And you're thinking more, what the fuck is I watching? What is this? And then the third arc is fucking wild. It moved me. This is like one of the first. I'd credit this as the first story that made me feel like I am never going to be competent at telling stories.
This is great because you've told me enough that I want to go and watch it without actually telling me anything about it at all.
Yeah,
which I think is kind of maybe par for the course for manga, because a lot of it is really fucking difficult to explain in like a casual recommendation.
It is. Well, and the thing I love about it is, as far as story goes, is these arcs, they involve like sword duels, which you have like a physical battle in almost every episode, but there's also like subtext that's going on behind the scenes. Do you know what I'm saying?
I know, I'm intrigued. I'm going to check it out.
This is why I want you to watch it, because you've been so eloquent about talking about all this shit, and I'm not. And yeah, whether we record it or not, I want you to go watch this show, and I just want to talk about it with you.
Goddamn, I really hope Steve watches this and comes back and like, well, that was utter shit.
Yeah, that would fucking teach you for your Evil Dead 2 opinions, you bastard.
So 3 seasons, 13 episodes each, 39 episodes total, and then a movie, which is
nice.
Kind of a retelling of the series, but kind of just a bunch of fucking nonsense that's beautifully animated, and a hell of a climax there.
Right.
Oh, I want to spoil it, but no. People go watch this, because
speaking of beautifully animated nonsense, I wanted to really get on. I think we've talked quite well about the solid, inarguable contenders, Cowboy Bebop being a really good example of that. And we've also hinted at the deep stuff, but we've talked a little bit about the obviously completely shallow stuff. Now I want to talk about what may be the most completely shallow anime ever, or possibly the most brilliant satire of shallow anime I've ever seen. It's the hyper macho, hyper homoerotic Baki. And Baki is it's a story about a 70-year-old high school student who has a K-pop star's head and the Incredible Hulk's body. By day, he's a high school student. By night, he goes into an underground tournament fight and basically fucking cripples people. It's, I don't know how to explain it. It's just, it takes itself so, imagine there's a coin. On one side, you've got hyper machismo and utter sincerity. And on the other side, you've got hilarity and maximum gayness. And it's like,
Well,
the creators of this show flipped that coin, didn't even look where it landed, and then just animated an entire fucking show. And I'm still not sure which one it is. I don't want to look up anything into it because it's so beautiful to me how it is now. I don't
All
want
right, I'm
anything
looking
to
this up
spoil it.
now.
one thing you missed, Steve, is that you said it's about this 17-year-old boy. Yet, I'm about 15 episodes into this, and he is the character who shows up the least in this series.
Oh yeah, I mean, but what the plot is, there are hyper kung fu people in the world, and they're like Dragon Ball Z, and they have superpowers.
Oh my god, this is the most homoerotic I've ever seen fighters drawn.
Jesus Christ, they're naked most of the time, but it's
Yeah.
kind of every muscle in their body and new muscles made up, animated with utter precision and care. And it's about all these criminals, and they basically, all of them suddenly decide to break out of prison because they
Whoa!
want to know the taste of defeat. So there's somebody who literally gets hanged. It's like, oh, you got the death penalty for being a criminal. And he's like, I'm done with being hanged. See ya. I want to go find the taste of defeat.
Sorry, I'm scrolling through Google Images, and I was like,
Is that a-
Oh my
Is
God.
that a dude with muscles for eyeballs?
They've got muscular lips, mate. They've got muscular lips. There's a scene in it where somebody gets punched in the neck, full force, and he flexes his neck and hurts the other guy's hand because his neck is that muscular. But it's not played for laughs.
No, this is dead serious.
It's dead serious. There's a guy in it who gets shot with a shotgun, and later on, he's sitting there. He's called Unchained. He's my favorite character. It's like anime doesn't really have a lot of black people in it, and it doesn't have a lot of gay people in it. So when it does have them, it has them extremely both, and then not particularly a bit clumsily handled. So Unchained.
Sorry. Let me. What is this called?
It's called Baki.
That's what I thought you said. But BA
K.I..
K.I.
All right. Well, all right. You might have said that in the beginning. I'm finding a bunch of fucking bicycle pictures.
I've seen people cosplaying this dude with the headband with the metal plate, and I had no fucking idea what it was from.
How could you cosplay anyone from Baki? You just have to be nude and extremely muscular. Anyway, I want to explain this. This kind of sums it up to me. There's this guy, and he gets shot with a shotgun. And then he goes back to his house, and he eats about 3 wheelbarrows full of steak. And all the other people are just talking it's like, oh, he got shot, but now he's healing himself. He must eat the steak to heal himself. He's like, yeah, the protein repairs my muscles. And then later on, they're like, didn't you get shot with a shotgun? How did your skin repair? He's like, oh, I borrowed a technique from old-timey pugilists because they used to rub salt on their skin. I'm like, okay, half of this show is you trying to explain your ridiculous superpowers with slightly feasible training techniques, and the other half of you is you taking your clothes off and getting really close to other dudes.
And one of the things I like is the needless exposition. There's a fight early on where a guy gets a flashbang grenade thrown in his face, and the anime literally stops as a voiceover explains in vivid detail, like for 5 minutes, what a flashbang does, and then picks up at the fight with pretty much, and it did nothing to this guy.
Yeah, it does that all the time. It'll just randomly stop and go, well, this ridiculous bullshit you're seeing, it's kind of feasible because of this historical fact. Anyway, back to the madness. The mostly nude madness.
Yes, this is feasible, and then they immediately cut back to a guy punching out a brick wall.
Yeah, there's this guy, big muscular guy. They're all big muscular guys, and he's just they all do things that should kill them, but then they escape, and then somebody tracks them down and kills them anyway. He's standing there naked, and then the guy who's hunting him down comes in and goes, we need to finish our fight. And he goes, okay, goes to pull his pants on. And the guy's like, who said you could put your pants back on? I'm like, all right, well, this is it. This is where they're finally going to fuck. But they don't. They never do. There's all this unspoken homoeroticism all the way through it that just kind of like, having some feelings now. Better punch this guy through a fucking window. And I literally can't work out if it's supposed to be that way because it's self-aware or whoever made this is just balls out mental. And that's why
I'm
it's
going.
wonderful.
I'm going for balls out mental because like I said, I've been watching this all week, and it is entertaining as fuck. But it's kind of like goddamn, you know.
I mean, can it be both?
I don't know if it can. Well, he might be wildly schizophrenic. Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to look at. I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to look into the mechanics of how and why this was made, or who thought this would be a good idea, who greenlit it, how they got people to voice over it with a straight face. I don't want to know any of that. It's just years ago, I wrote a pilot for a series I called, and that would be an animated series called Dub Fighter Super Exceed. And the conceit was, it was a piss steak of hyper macho kung fu anime, but run for a bad Google Translate, so nothing quite made sense. And I thought I was being a little bit snarky and cool there. But it was like 1% as insane as Baki, which has 2 seasons. Obviously, some of the best animators in the world. People have been looking really hard at the male body. And it's just mental and wonderful.
And anime getting more popular in Western culture and more accessible leads us to things like Love, Sex, and Robots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was watching that tonight, and actually I thought it was like a 2000 AD comic come to life.
It actually is a science fiction anthology come to life.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of short stories by a bunch of people we know.
It's wonderfully animated and wonderful stories. It's a really great series. I don't know if it's even on the same playing field as anime. I really think anime is just kind of its own thing. But it was a great contender. It would be wonderful to see animation stories taken that seriously by us Westerners.
And I think that's kind of where we're going, because this was it taken seriously as a storytelling medium, and things like She-Ra being super popular, are moving all of that. And it's another medium, and some of us, who shall remain nameless on this podcast, Joe Brassi, who write giant galactic anime fight scenes, you know,
well, yeah,
this is good for y'all.
We're a little late to the party, but it's great that the groundwork has been laid by this kind of really rich and attractive medium. It's kind of influenced Western art styles and Western comic books and Western animation, but I don't think we'll ever produce anything as pure and wonderful as Baki. I just don't think we can do it.
Some things, though, I mean, like, here's another thing. Look at all of the shit put out by Studio Ghibli.
Oh, yeah.
Its period. Like, that stuff ranks, in some cases, above and beyond what some of the stuff that Disney has done. It's easily on par. And it's
timeless
visually
as well.
stunning. Yeah, absolutely. I think were you talking about Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind? Earlier? Yeah. That was one that I saw for the first time probably like, oh god, it feels like yesterday, but it was probably closer to 15, 16 years ago. I saw it in high school, and I remember because I saw the translated version that had Patrick Stewart in it as the old swordsman, and yeah, that movie literally blew my brain open about what it is possible to tell stories about.
Yeah.
It was so unlike anything I had ever seen.
You wouldn't think early 80s from watching it. I mean,
no, you wouldn't. I in fact, until you mentioned that, I didn't know that it was that old.
That's a great example. Well, Studio Ghibli is such a wonderful catalogue of entertainment, and it's all timeless, and it's all got this kind of uniformly magical and accessible quality to it. But I have not seen them, 2 muscular men stuff another man's mouth filled with bullets and then uppercut him in the jaw so the bullets explode. And then that man just get up and be really angry about it and beat the shit out of everyone. From Studio Ghibli, yeah. So
I really gotta watch this anime. Jesus.
Yeah, we gotta wrap this up so I can go watch Baki.
But okay, listeners, I'm gonna come clean with you. This entire podcast was a conceit of me trying to get you to watch Baki because I don't want to feel alone anymore.
watch it, you can subscribe to our Patreon and join the Discord conversation because Steve will start an entire channel just for that.
And I just want to say Netflix should be thanking Steve, because I've seen this like ads for this pop up in my feed, and I was just like, yeah, don't care. But the second I read like a quick Steve review of it explaining just how batshit this was, then I was like, okay, I gotta watch this fucker.
I agree with Rick. Netflix should give me some money, but
Or at least comp your membership.
yeah, that'd be nice. But yeah,
Or contact us about one of the various wonderful series we have that we would love to sell to Netflix.
Or all of them.
I would say as a final message, if you're out there and you're listening and you happen to be one of the creators of Backy, don't contact us. I want you to remain a mystical unicorn of fuckery that I never fully understand. But as for our conversation about anime in general, ignoring Backy, I thought that was quite a nice little discussion, actually. I think
so, yeah.
got some good recommendations there. I'll be
very
definitely
pleasant.
watching the Revolutionary Girl. Utena.
Watch Gurren Lagann, Steve. You need to watch Gurren Lagann.
Gurren Lagann. Revolutionary Girl. Utena.
There was one I watched recently. I forget what it was. Some sword thing. It was on Netflix, but
Sword Art Online?
No, not Sword Art
Okay.
Online. This one was was basically the Game of Thrones of anime, and that every episode just makes it worse and worse for each of the characters.
All right.
Anime does tragedy really well as well.
Yeah. Grave of the Fireflies.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's seen that. It's the most it may be Grave of the Fireflies may be the single most depressing work of art ever put to film.
I've heard about it. I didn't watch it specifically because of that, but
it's dark.
Hard pass.
I don't
It's
know.
dark.
I might say Elfen Lied is pretty fucking depressing to watch.
Yeah, but that's a different kind of depressing, Rick.
Elfen.
That's people getting quadriplegalized by psionic powers and then crying about it for an entire episode.
Yeah, Elfen Lied is not about a pair of Japanese kids during the end of World War II. You know, their house gets firebombed. They run away into the woods. The brother is so proud that his sister starves to death, and then he's miserable forever.
No, you're right. Somehow it's worse.
Yeah, got to pass.
I'm going to watch both of them in a row. Get really drunk and really sad.
I appreciate you guys landing on that grenade for me.
I might live stream. That'd be a work of art in itself. Let's just watch the saddest animes of all time. For fat middle-aged Englishmen.
Yeah, but will you wear shorts on your head while you do it?
Oh, probably.
Eventually.
Yeah.
Did you ever find out whose shorts those were?
No. That's a mystery for another time, listeners.
Don't forget to come back to hear the story of Steve Thunderpants on his head.
That's an entire different podcast about things we don't remember from our 20s.
Yes, but first go watch Backy, because the rest of it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it certainly puts things into perspective, does Becky.
Yeah, if you think we're batshit crazy, look, there's Backy.
Okay, thanks for tuning in. That was a weird one, but a nice one, as I hope they all are for you, dear listener. And we'll see you next time. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.